Turning overseas now, and Russia is dealing with the aftermath of Saturday's aborted mutiny by the mercenary Wagner Group. This morning, we heard from Russia's FSB. That's the main security service in Russia. The FSB said that it was closing its criminal investigation into the armed rebellion. On top of that, Russian state media, citing the defense ministry, said preparations were underway for the transfer of the group's heavy military equipment to Russia's armed forces. The steps come after both President Putin and the head of the Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, spoke yesterday for the first time since the incident. President Biden also addressed the short-lived mutiny. Take a listen to what he said.
We made clear that we were not involved. We had nothing to do with it. This was part of a struggle within the Russian system. We're going to keep assessing the fallout of this weekend's events and the implications for Russia and Ukraine. But it's still too early to reach a definitive conclusion about where this is going.
NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobiea joins us now from Kyiv. So, Kelly, walk us through the steps that were actually taken by Moscow this morning. Why is the FSB dropping its case against the Wagner Group?
So, Joe, the statement is pretty short, but what the FSB says is essentially the reason those cases are being dropped is because the soldiers involved, those Wagner fighters, didn't march all the way to Moscow because they stopped, turned around, and in the FSB's words, the actions aimed at committing a crime didn't happen. It falls in line with this deal that was orchestrated, put together by the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, in which the Kremlin announced on Saturday that none of these fighters, nor any of the leaders, frankly, would be held accountable, that none of them would be charged criminally. And at this point, you have an interesting situation developing because President Putin last night said that he would honor terms of that deal and he would allow Wagner fighters as well to choose their fate, essentially. They could go home, they could join the Russian military, or they could go to Belarus. And that leads on to this statement by the defense ministry, the Russian state media citing the defense ministry, saying that they're turning over all of their equipment. So the question remains, do they join the Russian military? Do they stay in the fight in Ukraine? Or do they sort of join their leader, Prigozhin, in Belarus? Joe?
You know, Kelly, we know President Putin spoke again a little earlier this morning, giving a speech to the military and law enforcement. That's in addition to his speech yesterday. So what are we hearing from Putin right now? And what about Prigozhin's comments? Do we even know if he made it to Belarus?
Sure. So Putin spoke in the heart of the Kremlin today. It was very much about imagery, standing in front of soldiers, giving this speech, thanking the security services for, he said, for doing their job, telling the National Guard essentially that they helped to stop a civil war in Ukraine. And also, for the first time, I think, recognizing that Russian pilots were killed on Saturday during this insurrection, holding a minute's silence for those pilots during those talks today. Interestingly, he also said that he was not ruling out that Western security services could have been involved in Saturday's event, saying that it may have been inspired by the West and overlapped with Prigozhin's ambitions. In his speech last night, he went further. He called the leaders of that movement traitors, but he did say that the overwhelming majority of Wagner fighters were patriots, and he was almost asking them to join the fold, to stay within the Russian military. Prigozhin, for his part, said he never meant to mount a coup. He was only on a protest march. And in terms of his whereabouts, Joe, we still can't confirm that he's in Belarus, but his plane has been tracked through Flight Radar 24 as going from St. Petersburg to southern Russia and then to Minsk, the Belarusian capital, at some point this morning.
Of course, we should add President Biden denying any American involvement here. Kelly, meanwhile, there is still a war going on in Ukraine. Real quick, what's the latest on the battlefield?
Yeah, President Zelensky projecting the image of hope, of progress. He said there's been progress on all fronts. He visited troops on the front line yesterday. That video has been playing quite a bit here over the past few hours. And he said that they've looked at operational decisions as well. Whether that means there's some sort of change in strategy on the battlefield, we don't know. But they are sort of projecting this image of unity, strength, and progress on this side.
Right. Kelly Kobiea in Kyiv. Kelly, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.